In this screencast, I'm going to be helping my client with a couple of questions she's got about the hero unit on the home page for her website. So she's asking about how can I move the white block behind this text on the image. She's asking about grouping things together, how to add a block shape in the first place, how do I change the opacity of the white block. Let me go ahead and take a look at this. So here's what we're talking about. She's asking about how can I manipulate this thing. And let's just sort of look and see how this thing is built in Elementor. So we'll edit with Elementor. And now we'll look. And so the first thing to understand is the whole thing is a section. And this section, for example, it's got the height set to 75 VH. VH is viewport height, I believe. So it's basically your viewport it's like 75% of the viewport height is what it's set to. You could also set it by pixels, but in this case we said, hey, we want it to cover 3/4 of the screen when you got this thing loaded in. So that's how that's set, and this thing also has its background image set. Now, the section itself, you'll notice it's got a column in the middle. It's a one-column section. It's right here. But first, let's show you how that column is positioned. Right now, it's set to middle. We could easily change that to top or bottom. And if you're going to do those types of things, like for example, let's say you put it on the bottom, at that point you're either going to want to add some bottom padding inside this section so that it's not sitting right on the bottom. So like you could do, here's the section, and let's go on the bottom, and maybe we put 40 pixels. And so now it's not sitting right on the bottom, and it's got a little bit of space right there. But then another thing you could do is this. So let's get rid of the padding. Another thing, design pattern we've seen before is you could make this thing be full width. If you did it full width like that, and then maybe you left align your title and left align your text and put your button over here on the right, and then you might do things like, you see that's a border radius on the column itself. Do you see that rounded corner? Like you'd go in and you'd probably get rid of that. And if you're going to do that, if you're going to do this type of setup, you come in and you're editing the column. I clicked on that little gray button right there. I go down to border, and then I just zero out my border radius, or just get rid of it. And see, now if I click, you can see how it doesn't have a border radius. But I don't necessarily, I'm just showing you guys right now. I'm not necessarily making a change, and so we're going to change that column back. Let's go back to its border, and we'll restore that 20 pixel border radius. And for the section itself, we're going to put the column in the middle. Now, the last thing we want to do is get it back to that boxed width. And then my client also asked, how do I change the opacity of this little section right here? And so here's what we can do. This is the column itself. We're going to go back to the Style tab. We're going to go with the background, and it's the color right here. Check it out. See this little slider? It's your opacity slider, like that. Just change the opacity right there. You can make it completely opaque, or I'm going to restore it to sort of where we had it right there. So now, that's what that thing is. And so let's see if I've answered all the questions. How can I move the white block behind this text lower on the image? So that's going to be just those settings I was showing for the section. Can these items be grouped together? I think by what I've shown you, they are grouped together. It's a column. So when you move the column, everything inside of the column gets moved. I think I've answered your question right there. And then how do you add a block shape in the first place? Well, it's not necessarily, you're not saying I'm adding a block and putting things. It's more on your page designs, or one of the building blocks of Elementor is you've got sections. And so let's say, for example, I'm just going to do another one real quick, just so that you see, this is like how you'd add a section. So I'm going to stick a section right here, and just for the sake of our demo, we'll set it to minimum height. It'll set it to 400. I'm going to just make the background color be a color. Let's say it's orange. All right, so now I've got a section right there. Now, this column on the inside, it's your little block that you're talking about. So like, let's put some content in there just to sort of show you. Like, I'll put a heading. We'll center align that thing, and we'll change it to white for our text color. Maybe we want to bump up the font size to 72 pixels, something like that. Now it's right there. Now, how do you add a block? Well, that is a block, and so really what you're thinking about is, how might I style that? So what you can do is you can come in, for example, and style the background. Basically, all these elements have options to style like your background. So you can come in here and maybe we wanted to make have a background on this guy. I mean, just for the sake of showing, it's not going to be, I'm not doing something that's aesthetically pleasing. But there we put a background on it. So that's a little block with text inside of it. But maybe we didn't even want it there. Sometimes you might want to just put the styling on the element itself. And so you can do that for the heading. And like what you could do is you come in, and this is like an advanced setting when you're working with the heading. So you notice it wasn't under style, but an advanced setting is to actually go and add the background to the heading itself. And if you're going to do something like that, like let's say let's just pick something with a color dropper, something like that. Now once you do that, it's a little bit different than when you've added on the column. You're going to need to go in and do some more advanced settings. Like you probably want to add some padding, let this thing breathe a little bit. So there's 20 pixels or maybe 10 pixels. 10 pixels, all right, that's 1 pixel. Let's bump it up to 10 right there. All right, now we've got, like a red box around it. If you wanted to round the corners, or once again, remember these are it's your border radius settings. I'll set it at 20 so that's pretty obvious. And then I'm going to click and see there we've added some text and we put back a background actually on the text itself. And so that's how, like, I think that is going to answer that question. Like, how do I add a block shape in the first place? It's not that you add the block. You think more, I'm going to add the thing, and then you add a background to it, and that's going to make it look like a block because you're adjusting the background of the particular element. So in this case, we've got a background on this column, and we're playing around with it, and we've adjusted it. In this case, I've just shown you, hey, we could either add a background to this column itself, or in this case, for a little advanced technique, I showed you can do it just to a text element and those types of things. And so that's really what you're doing when you're adding blocks. I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to save this out. And now we'll see if I've given my client enough info to turn this into what she's looking for on her website. Let's hope so. Otherwise, I may be back on here with a part 2 of this video. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.